Imagine your career, your visa, your future, all controlled by one person, one PI, one decision, one mood, one mistake, and years of hard work could crumble. Too much power in one professor's or PI's hands is not just unfair, it's toxic. And it's happening in lab around the world, quietly normalizing anxiety, depression, and fear among PhDs and postdocs. And this is not just about a bad PI. Some of them might be well intentioned, but it's about a system that rewards brilliance without accountability. From time to time, I receive a lot of comments on my LinkedIn post because I have been talking about these issues for over 10 years now. And now also on YouTube about a very important issue in academia. I decided to address this here and perhaps for the very first time. But all the messages and comments from you all made it very, very clear to me that this needs to be said loud and clear. Because I know that you all need a strong voice who speaks for you because many of you are not speaking. You choose to remain silent. And one big reason for that is PhDs and postdocs rarely speak up is because there's a huge power imbalance. Complaining risk authorships, recommendation letters, funding, and for international PhDs and postdocs, it brings up visa issues. And trainees often feel trapped. Their career depends on someone, that PI, who holds disproportionate authority, and the fear of retaliation by the PI silences the postdocs and PhDs. Many also believe that speaking up won't lead to any meaningful change because they feel too tiny in front of a big system. And the system itself protects PIs over trainees. I decide to dedicate this to all those hardworking PhDs and postdocs and brilliant researchers who needed to voice this out so badly. And this brings us to a very, very important question. How is academia creating toxic labs, often unintentionally? Because there is a structural flaw in how academia selects and promotes principal investigators or tenure track faculty. This very flaw is producing narcissistic PIs with dictator like behavior, which is turning, which is creating a lot of toxic lab environments. And it is no surprise that data from 23 countries, including USA, India, Australia, Canada, European countries like Sweden, show that on an average, more than 50% of PhD report experiencing clinical depression. And I have covered this issue on a separate video, and you may watch that too. This is alarming, but the root cause is not just about these PIs being bad or unfit. This is not an individual failure. When I say when I'm saying this, I mean that these outcomes are not solely due to personal shortcomings of a PI or a professor. It is a system design issue. The way academia evaluates, selects, and promotes principal investigators or tenure track professors, it creates conditions where even intelligent, well-intentioned scientists may behave destructively because the system rewards brilliance without measuring leadership, without measuring empathy, or measuring mentorship skills. The design of academic system concentrates power in one hand without any accountability. And that is what produces these toxic environments. And as a result, the PhDs suffer, the postdoc suffers. So let's examine how academia selects principal investigators. And promotion to tenure track and beyond is based primarily on publication record, citation metrics. If they already have some grant funding, let's say R01 grant from NIH, and the institutional pedigree. Sure, these are all good metrics, and the selection committee might be well intentioned. I'm not doubting that, and we are trying to address this issue from an unbiased perspective and trying to be objective here. But academic system and the selection committee need to remind us themselves that publishing in journals like Nature is considered proof of intellectual excellence, and securing major grants such as NIH R01 funding only signals research independence. These are meaningful indicators of scientific ability, sure, but they are not indicator of leadership competence. Grants and publications may prove that a PI has intellectual capacity, but they are telling you nothing about their ability to lead, their ability to control their emotions or regulate their emotions, or develop the next generation of scientists by training PhDs and postdocs. Again, this is not a failure on a single individual or PI. It is the design of the system, the way academia evaluates candidates and give them concentrated power without any accountability. So when institutions grant someone with this level of authority, control over authorship, and career gatekeeping power, and when they are tenured, giving them long-term job security, sometimes that lasts for 30-40 years, without rigorously evaluating their leadership, they are not just creating hierarchy. Academia is creating concentrated power, and concentrated power is the main problem here, is the reason why these dictators are created and the tyranny is created. One individual temperament can shape or distort multiple careers, and academia needs to remind themselves over and over again. The careers of PhDs, postdocs, and other researchers working in the lab should not be in the hand of one person. This brings us to a very important question. How does the quality of a professor decides the quality of PhDs, postdocs, or future science leaders they train? So we already know something very important because we all have done our schooling, right? And this brings us to the importance of human development. Decades of educational research show that the quality of a teacher has one of the strongest effects on students' outcome. And this starts with school. Studies in economics and education, including large-scale longitudinal analysis, so there was this study by this person called Raj Chetty, and he and his group have shown that high quality teachers measurably improve long-term outcomes. And even outside this research, we all know that, right? So it's not the test score, but the lifetime learning, college attendance, and career trajectory that gets impacted by the presence or absence of a good teacher. In other words, the person leading the room can literally change the life of the people in the room. So we accept this in elementary school, we accept this in high schools, we accept this in undergraduate education. So why do we suddenly forget this in graduate school? Why do we assume that once someone enters a PhD or postdoc program, leadership quality no longer matters? This does not make any sense, because in reality, and we all know that in reality the stakes are even higher. A PI is not just teaching content or running lab, they control funding for the lab, the authorship for their students, recommendation letters, visa sponsorships, career access. The power differential here is enormous, and yet And yet, academia still operates under one persistent myth. And the myth is that the smartest PI or scientist automatically will make the best lab leader. It does not. That's not how it works. And we know that. Why are we keeping our eyes blind to this? Because almost no departmental committee systematically evaluates these qualities when hiring or promoting a tenure track professor to full-time positions. Emotional regulation should be given importance. Emotional intelligence, conflict management, mentorship effectiveness, the lab climate or culture these PIs create, the psychological safety of the PhD students and postdocs who work under them, and the work satisfaction or the happiness index of the lab. These should not be minor, these should not be treated as a minor oversight. This is a system design problem that needs to be fixed. Because we all know that when there is too much concentrated power in one hand, and I might be saying this over and over again, but this is what the system needs to be reminded. They need to provide them long-term, if they are providing them long-term job security without checking whether they can lead people effectively, it is going to create problem, and it has already created problem, right? And when this is concentrated with power, when this is paired with weak leadership skills, it is a recipe for tyranny. This system flaw, the promotion of the tyrannical or the toxic PIs, is a key cause of depression, anxiety, and even suicidal ideation among PhDs and postdocs. And multiple reports have reported this. Like I said, I have covered this in another video. Please do watch that if this topic is important for you. But here is a reality check for the deans and chairs of various departments. If you are running an academic system, you might think, how would I know this? And I say, do not just take my word for it. I challenge you to randomly speak with 10-15 PhD students or postdocs from any lab. But make sure that when you do that, the identities of the PhDs and postdocs remain completely confidential and their positions are fully secured. Otherwise, they will hesitate to speak. So once you assure them that nothing will happen to them for speaking up, they will tell you exactly what they are going through. And that alone will provide a powerful evidence of what I'm saying. Or if you have time, you can review the global reports collected from PhDs and postdocs around the world. Here's the irony that amazes me. Every professor and dean was once a PhD student themselves. They have seen firsthand the challenges PhDs and postdocs face, often including their own experiences. And yet, once they step into the position of power, many ignore these lessons. The real question is, if we have lived these experiences, why do we not use that insight to create better lab environments? Why do we allow a system that we ourselves suffer under to continue? Shouldn't we learn from our own journey and design labs where future scientists thrive rather than merely surviving? I have another important question that we will be addressing here. How does tyranny show up in labs? Because this needs to be voiced out for the PhDs and postdocs who are suffering. This tyranny creates fear among graduate researchers and postdocs. A genius PI without emotional maturity creates fear among PhDs and postdocs. This fear reduces curiosity of the researchers. And when the curiosity is reduced, it reduces innovation. And very often, this fear is subtle. You may not find any drama around it. It looks very simple, like a student is afraid to ask a question. A postdoc avoids disagreement with the PI. And projects are designed to be safe, ensuring that the PI sees the result they want. And this is how data gets fabricated. Data is misrepresented to satisfy the PI, because admitting to the PI that the experiment is failing might provoke criticism of the trainee rather than scrutiny of the hypothesis itself. Behavioral science consistently show that stress narrows cognitive bandwidth. When people operate under perceived threat, like the one that we see in academia, they prioritize self-protection over exploration. And exploration is the very foundation of scientific innovation, and we are risking it. Organizational research on high performing teams repeatedly identifies that psychological safety is a key predictor of learning behavior and sustained performance. When individuals feel safe to admit uncertainty, they iterate faster. When they fear embarrassment or retaliation, they suppress ideas, or even worse, they generate false data. And this should not come to you as surprise. What does healthy lab leadership actually look like? It is an important question. Healthy lab leadership in a research lab is not about a PI being soft. It is structural predictability and fairness. In a high functioning lab with a PI who is also a great leader, a student can say, I do not know, without fearing humiliation. Trainees can admit gap in the knowledge safely without being judged. Uncertainty about why an experiment failed becomes an information in such labs, not weakness. Failed experiments are treated as valuable data. This is where innovation happens. In healthy labs, authorship expectations are defined at project initiation, not at the time of submission. And this prevents any last minute conflicts. And this is the problem that PhDs and postdocs face. Contribution criteria are transparent. Everyone's roles and responsibilities are clear. You will be surprised how many PhDs will find this alone as a big relief. Because when ambiguity is minimized, goals, deadlines, and expectations are communicated clearly. When feedback targets the experiment and not the researcher, the PhDs, the postdoc, such positive feedback and critiques improve the science without attacking the individual. In healthy labs, visa status is never used as leverage to exploit international trainees. In healthy labs, international trainees feel supported, not intimidated. In healthy labs, power asymmetry is acknowledged and handled responsibly, and the hierarchy guides mentorship, not domination, but mentorship. Burnout, when the PhDs or postdocs feel burnout, it is not confused with commitment. Well-being of researcher is prioritized alongside productivity. In healthy labs, sustained productivity is prioritized over episodic exhaustion. Steady workflows replace frantic burst of research outcome. A healthy PI will never use a reference letter as a weapon. The support is fair and professional. Those who are listening, did you notice something critical here? None of these practices followed in a healthy lab culture reduces scientific rigor. They reduce emotional volatility and create steady system for PhDs and postdocs and for science at large. And steady systems outperforms volatile systems over time. A healthy PI with high emotional intelligence will always outperform an intelligent PI who is toxic. Study labs retain talent. They produce reproducible science because the postdocs and PhDs are not fabricating data there. They graduate confident, independent researchers. That is compounding intellectual capital. And this is the best outcome you can expect for. We will not only achieve publications and grant funding, which could be a major outcome that the academic system expects, but we will also cultivate far more future leaders. How is mentorship quality evaluated by departments? It is rarely weighted the same way as a major grant. There's also a power gap. Graduate students cycle through every 4 to 6 years. Postdocs may cycle through 1 to 5 years on an average. But professors, they can stay for decades. So when complaints arise from PhDs or postdocs, which would be rare, but there might be some minor numbers, institutions face a difficult calculation. Shall they protect the trainee who will leave in a few years, or protect the grant revenue that the PI brings? And too often, productivity calculated through grant dollars, publications, institution prestige wins over powerless PhD students who have their degrees and years of hard work at stake. Once a professor becomes tenured and highly cited, well funded, and well known, their reputation can shield their behavior. And this is basically a power play. So the bigger question is, how should departments handle hiring while also valuing both scientific brilliance and leadership? The current academic system confuses intensity with excellence. We talked about it briefly in the previous section of this video. It confuses fear with rigor. But rigor does not require humiliation of PhDs and postdocs. Excellence of a PI should not require burnout of the researchers who work under them. But yet it does for so many PhDs and postdocs. The deans and the department chairs need to remind themselves that brilliance without emotional regulation creates volatility. Productivity without empathy leads to turnover. Authority without accountability generates fear. If institutions continue to reward only intellectual merit, only the metrics such as publications and citations and grant funding, while ignoring leadership qualities and the mental health of the PhDs and postdocs, they will reproduce environments where the outcome will depend heavily on the personality of a single PI, and we are leaving everything else to luck. And this is not the quality of a resilient system. We are creating a fragile one. That's why there are so many cases of depression and anxiety and suicides. Department must give equal emphasis to emotional intelligence or EQ alongside intellectual ability. I believe that the hiring and the promotion should not focus solely on grants and publications, which is currently the case. Sure, these metrics show scientific ability, but they say nothing about whether someone can lead people effectively and create a healthy lab culture, which is the very purpose why academia exists. So we are acting we are not acting properly in the role that we are supposed to play. When you give someone funding authority, authorship control, tenure level job security, you are not merely hiring a scientist, you are appointing a leader. But if you appoint a leader with asymmetric power, it's going to create a huge problem. If the IQ of the PI alone gets someone hired as a professor, EQ must determine who is entrusted with that power. And sure, you should hire people with high IQ who can publish and secure citations and fundings, but please make sure that these individuals also possess high EQ. If academia faces a dilemma and have to choose between two candidates, I believe they should give more weight to the one with higher EQ, or at least the same weightage as IQ. And again, if you can hire someone with both high IQ and EQ, it's even better. Why? Because PI with high EQ may focus primarily on their own CV and own career trajectory. But a PI with high EQ will actively build other leaders. People with high IQ are secure. They want their PhDs and postdocs to succeed as much as they want their own success. High EQ builds healthy lab culture. Institutions that fail to recognize the difference between brilliance and leadership will continue mistaking raw scientific talent for the ability to lead effectively. And this is already happening. There are enough examples to see around. This intellectual capital leads to high quality publications done for the right reason. When you hire people with high IQ, publication will be a natural outcome. Innovations will come and will change the world as a outcome of hiring high IQ people. The grant funding, publications, reputation will become a natural outcome of leadership rather than the criteria for hiring. Science thrives, the system benefits, and it's a true win-win for leaders, for the institutions, and most importantly for science and the scientists themselves if people with high EQ are given the responsibility to lead science and hire their PhDs and postdocs and build greater leaders under them. If you like this and the message resonated with you, please leave comments and let me know what issues do you face in academia or have seen someone else facing in academia. And I will love to make videos on those topics that truly help you. Until then, please take care of yourself.